Well, that's a bad one. Well, won't this be in the way? No. Thank.
Other people want to see.
I have to have a lot of help. Thank you. Good to see everybody. I'm glad to be back. Turn to the book of Daniel. Last time I was here, we had got into chapter 10 a little bit. Chapter 10 through 12 go together. They should be read at one sitting because this is all one vision that Daniel receives from God. Now, chapter 10 gives you a lot of events leading up to the vision. And then in chapter 11 and 12, you have the vision itself and Daniel's response to this vision. Now, I want to tell you as we begin, this is not easy reading, nor is it inexplicable. Some people just say, oh, you can't understand it. This is God's Word. This is not some little history book we pulled off the shelf. This is the Word of God, His revelation to man. It can be understood. Maybe not every little detail, but you can understand what's going on in these chapters. Now, what has helped me to try to understand these chapters is an understanding of the history that surrounds these chapters and understanding prophetic literature, which is a different kind of literature in the Bible. It has its own peculiarities, and we need to be familiar with that. Understanding apocalyptic literature, understanding its purpose, understanding its characteristics, all these things are very helpful in understanding these three chapters. Now, look at chapter 10. Again, chapter 10 is going to set up the vision, get you set up for this vision. There's just one vision that's being talked about in all these chapters, not three different visions, even though it's divided into three chapters. That was done by man. However you understand this vision, whatever your interpretation is, there's three things that we must remember. Number one, this vision deals with the people of Daniel. Two, it speaks of the latter days. Now, on the first one, it deals with the people of Daniel. You'll find this in, if you just jot these down and then you can read this for yourself when you get home and see if you agree with my understanding. That it deals with the people of Daniel is found in 10 verse 2 and 10 verse 14. Tells you very clearly. It speaks of a certain time period. And that's where we have a lot of division in religion. What time period is Daniel dealing with? Well, it explains that to you in chapter 10, verse 14. It's dealing with the latter days. But then you have to define what the latter days are, and we'll do that in just a moment. The vision is terminated in AD 70. Now think about it. The vision ends in AD 70. That's the destruction of Jerusalem. When all the sacrifices cease, the temple is destroyed, the priesthood is destroyed because all the records are taken away by the Romans, the city of Jerusalem is destroyed, which is predicted by Jesus in Matthew chapter 24. Everybody thinks Matthew 24 is talking about the end of the world. It's not. Matthew 25 is talking about that. Matthew 24 is talking about the end of Jerusalem. They come to Jerusalem, Jesus and his disciples, and they're having him admire all these beautiful buildings of the temple. He says, I want to tell you, there's not going to be one stone left up on another. The time's coming when there's not going to be one stone left upon another stone. Talking about the building of Jerusalem temple. And it doesn't exist to this day. Right now, a Muslim mosque stands in its place. So you have to understand when the vision ends. That's in chapter 12, verse 6 through 7. Now, this is a vision of warfare. Some brethren have said it's looking back on the 70 weeks. I would say that's possible. It begins with the Persian Empire. Then, after the Persian, it goes to the Greeks. Then it goes after Alexander the Great died. He had no heirs because his wife and son were killed, so he would have no heirs. That's why they did it back then. Really neat people. So when he died, he had no heirs. So he's got most of the world. What are you going to do with it? Well, they divided up into 4 sections and given into 4 of Alexander's generals. Now, what you're dealing with in this chapter mostly is the Seleucids and these people, Ptolemy. Now, if you're going to say it out loud, the P is silent. It's pronounced Ptolemy. These are the people, some of the people that inherited the land from Alexander the Great. And they're going to go back and forth. They are a divided kingdom. And what did Jesus say about a kingdom divided against itself? Can't stand. Well, these 4 generals are constantly in battle with each other, trying to take over each other's territory. Instead of uniting and conquering the rest of the world, which they could have easily done if they had had a humble mind and been willing to work with each other. Same thing happens in the church. These people are at each other's throats. And so, you know this kingdom, it's not going to last. So you have these generals and the people that follow them. And then after they're done away with, Rome. Chapter 11, the last few verses, brings in the Roman Empire. And it's continued into chapter 12. So that's who you're dealing with. He becomes, Ptolemy is the king of the north, but then when Rome becomes dominant, Rome is spoken of the king of the north. That's confusing to a lot of people. Rome is going to replace the Seleucids and the Ptolemies. They're going to become the world dominant figure. Now, verse 4 through 9 of chapter 10, everything about this man that appears to Daniel is frightening. It scares Daniel to even look upon this man that's given him this vision from God, because he is going to talk about thousands of people being put to death. So he's preparing Daniel for this frightening vision that he's about to see. 10 through 14, it says, Daniel is greatly loved. He's seeing all this warfare, all these people being killed. This vision is looking into the future. He's seeing all of this destruction, and many of his own people, God's people, being destroyed. So this response, you are greatly loved, that is a response to Daniel's concern for God's people, and also because of the prayer Daniel had offered to God that we studied in depth in chapter 9, one of the most beautiful prayers in the Bible. This is a response. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. James 5:16. Prayer is such a powerful tool that we have to fight against the devil and his hordes of people. So this is a response to Daniel's spiritual life, to Daniel as a person. Now, Michael is one of the chief princes. He's known as the champion of God's people in chapter 12, verse 1. And he tells us that all of this is going to happen in the latter days. Okay, now what does the latter days mean? Well, in the Bible it means several things. It doesn't just mean the Christian age. I know you've been told that all your life. That's wrong. It doesn't just mean the Christian age. The latter days can mean many different things. Sometimes it just means in the future, without a specific time period in mind. Just later, this is going to happen. I grew up with my grandparents the last teenage years of my life, and I'd ask my granddad when we're going fishing, he'd say, directly. Well, that can mean anywhere from 30 minutes to 4 days. And he didn't tell you which one it was. You just better be ready when he's ready, or you don't go. So the latter days, look at Hebrews 1, verse 1 in the New Testament. Hebrews 1, verse 1. God, who at sundry times, various times, and divers manners, spoken to the fathers by the prophets. Verse 2, Hebrews 1. But he hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son. Jesus did not live in the Christian age. Jesus died under what period of history? The Romans were in control. The Mosaic age. He brought the Mosaic law to its conclusion. Look at Colossians 2:14. He nailed the old Mosaic law to the cross. Jesus spoke in the Mosaic right at the end of the Mosaic age. That's when he did his teaching. He didn't speak during the Christian age. He did his teaching during the Mosaic age. So this word can mean the Christian age, Acts 2:17, or it can mean the latter portion of the Mosaic period of history. It's the last days in which God is going to deal with the Jewish people. Because after this age, Galatians 6:16, who is the Israel of God? The church. He deals through the church now. Doesn't matter what country you live in, what your race is, God doesn't care. If you belong to him, you're a Christian. That's the Christian age. He deals now through his people, the church. But at this period of time in which we are studying, this is the last days of the Jewish Commonwealth. The Roman general Titus, he later became an emperor, merciless, ungodly, like most of the emperors of Rome. He came in Jerusalem in 70 AD and destroyed the capital of the Jewish people and destroyed many of the cities around Jerusalem. So the Israelite nation as a commonwealth is destroyed in 70 AD. Now, look in verse 15 through 17. This is, and when Daniel sees this vision, this is his response. In chapter 10, 15 through 17, he is completely overwhelmed. Maybe that says something to us. Maybe we ought to be more affected by spiritual things instead of the physical being our main focus in life. Maybe we ought to be more affected by what happens to God's people, by what happens to the church of the living God. Maybe that ought to mean more to us. God adored this man because he not only loved God, he loved God's people. Some people think you can just love God and you go to heaven. No. You didn't get that out of the Bible. You have to have a love for his people, a genuine, honest, sincere love, like this man. He is overwhelmed that his people are going to have to go through all this. Now, he's not going to have to go through it himself, but his people are, the people of God. And he is overwhelmed. Verse 18 and following, Daniel is uplifted. He's devastated here, but in verse 18 and following, he's uplifted. He's strengthened. He's told, be strong. He's going to see some ugly things. He's going to see in this vision some things that to him, he just can't believe it's happening. God says, be strong. He says that to Christians in Ephesians 6:11, Ephesians 6:10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the glory of his power. When hard times are coming, and if you're so out of it that you don't know that hard times are coming here, turn on Fox News tonight. Now, not these other jokers that are lying to you. You turn on Fox News and you look at what those people are doing to Los Angeles. At one time, a beautiful city. It's not beautiful anymore. Our president is even sending in some of the Marine Corps. And it's spreading to Dallas. They're having demonstrations in Dallas, in Denver. And it seems like it's just spreading all over because we're sending all of these illegal people back to their homes. We're having trouble over it. Our president ran on that. He said, that's the first thing I want to do. He got more votes than anybody's ever gotten. So apparently that's the will of the American people. But he's having a lot of resistance, and it's spreading all over. We're headed for hard times. So, oh, that'll never happen here. Yeah, that's probably what they thought in Dallas. I used to live in Dallas. I'd have never thought something like that happened in Dallas. It could. So he's telling Daniel, look, you be strong. I want you to be strong as you see this vision and you understand what's coming in the latter days. After the fall of Persia, the Greeks come into power. Now, what does that have to do with God's scheme of redemption? Galatians 4:4. In the fullness of time, at just the right moment in history, Jesus came. The Greeks brought a universal language to the whole world. Now, when Jesus comes, a little bit later on, now we have a universal language. The Romans created a road system that's still used today. They cleaned up the oceans. You couldn't even sail anywhere, it was so bad. I tell you what, they cleaned it up. They said, you're not going to do that, and they went out and just killed them. Those pirates that just took over the oceans, Rome took care of that. So the gospel could go freely all through the world. Well, the Greeks come in, and you see that God's people have powerful enemies. Some of these people persecuted God's people in ways we can't even imagine and don't even want to think about. We have powerful enemies today. There are people out there that you don't know about who hate what we teach. They hate what we stand for. They hate what we live. And they want us dead. That's the way it was here. They had powerful enemies. But look at their allies. Look at the strong allies that are working behind the scenes for God's people. That's what Daniel sees. And that's what I don't even understand it. And I don't know anyone that understands it. I had a relative one time that came into my room and went, I said, okay, what is it now? Well, I just saw a vision. This is real. This is not like my relative that's on the mothership. This is real. Daniel is seeing this. And he just can't believe this is happening to the people of God. And God's saying, you be strong. You get out there and be strong. Chapter 11, beginning in verse 2, all the way through chapter 12, verse 13, is the future. Here comes the future, and it's not a pretty picture. If you look at verse 4, chapter 11, verse number 4, when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and it shall be divided toward the four winds of the heaven, and not to his prosperity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up even for others besides those. That's the Greek Empire. When Alexander the Great died, his descendants didn't take over the rulership because they killed him. His generals took over. So Alexander the Great is spoken of in verse 4, and the division of the Greek Empire. The accuracy of this prophecy, according to history, is really amazing. Daniel is looking into the future hundreds of years, and he just predicts these things in such an amazing way. After Alexander died, his kingdom is divided. Envy and strife bring the ruin of that kingdom. King Ptolemy is the king of the south in verse 5 and 6. I'm sorry, King Ptolemy, king of south, right, is in Egypt in verse 5, 6, and 8. 7 and 8, Ptolemy the third defeats Seleucus the second. This goes on and on and on. Verse 9 and 10. Seleucus the second is going to have war with Ptolemy the third, but he returns to his land, and his son Antiochus is the next one that's related. In verse 11 through 20, the king of the south, Ptolemy the fourth, and he's going to be in the latter days of the Jewish commonwealth. He is going to fight with Epiphanes the third. The Jews decide to stand with Epiphanes. They make a decision. We're going to fight with this guy. Totally wrong. He is terribly defeated. Now, what does this do for the Jewish people? Now they're going to have to deal with Antiochus Epiphanes the fourth. The third was his father. The fourth gave the most severe persecution to God's people during this time period. He stopped their sacrifices. He offered a pig on the altar of burnt offering. I mean, this guy hated the Jews. And he killed thousands of the Jewish people. Well, Epiphanes gave Ptolemy his daughter Cleopatra, because he thought, if these two are wed, see, people have weddings for a lot of different reasons back here. If these two are weds, that means I'll have an ally in Egypt, because Rome is beginning to get strong. Well, the sad thing about it, when Cleopatra's father is slain and his army is decimated by the Roman army, she goes before the Roman Senate, real neat lady, and praises them for killing her father and his armies. Really, really neat people that we're dealing with here. Now, when you see the show, if you ever saw the show Cleopatra, I saw it back when I was about 10 years old, you don't get all of that. You get some of her slyness, but you don't get all that. I mean, this woman is something else. So it doesn't do any good. And now the Jews are under Epiphanes the fourth, and he is persecuting them in a horrible way. Cleopatra was not what they thought she would be. Verse 19 describes Epiphanes Antiochus the fourth and his great fall. Seleucus the fourth, Philopator, how'd you like to call him in for supper? He began to reign, but he only reigned for a short time, very short time, in verse 21 through 26. We have a description of Antiochus the fourth. He had one king that was in covenant with him, and he paid dearly for it. Ptolemy the seventh, we're up to the seventh one now, became a vassal to him, but was not. Epiphanes leaves Egypt by Rome's demand, and he is furious. He's one of these people, if he can't tell everybody what to do, he's going to be swelled up like an old bullfrog because he's not happy. If he can't order people around, he has no life. So he's ordered back to his homeland. He is furious. He goes through Palestine and takes out his fury on the Jewish people. And he kills thousands of them. This is in verse 27 through 35. Now in verse 36 and following, I believe this to be the Romans. And this is going to lead us right in to chapter 12. Something real important in chapter 12 that I want you to notice is verse 1, the first four words. At that time. Now, when you interpret the Bible, one of the most important rules, if not the most important, is you interpret in context. Chapter 12 is talking about that time. And you have to keep that in mind as you read through this chapter. The Romans are taking control of the world. They are the world dominating force. And chapter 12, verse 1, is beginning with that period of time. Now, we know what's going to happen. When they take over Jerusalem, the Jewish people were rebellious. Can you imagine going all the way from Rome to Jerusalem back in those days? What a grueling trip. And you take that trip as a soldier, and you go to Judea, these people that if you turn your back, they'll slit your throat. You leave your family, you leave your homeland, and you go to Judea, and these people hate you. Well, why did they hate the Romans? Because the Romans were what nationality? Gentiles. Jews hated Gentiles ruling over them. They hated it. Should God's people be ruled by those of the world? And so they continually rebelled, continually rebelling. Finally, Rome gets sick of it, and Titus comes and destroys Jerusalem. And all this we see in the 12th chapter. Look at verse 2. This is the most controversial passage of the chapter. I can find it, Daniel 12:2. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Is that the first or second? Second? Okay, I want you to study that verse for next time and not just get in your mind automatically what it means, but how does it fit in with the prophetic literature of Daniel in chapter 12?